What's up guys, my name is Ace, and with the Modern Warfare beta now over, today I wanted to share my final post-beta impressions, opinions, and feedback based on my experiences. Now a few things to get out of the way at the beginning here. First off, this is all feedback and opinions based on a beta build of the game. Yes, it's not the full build of the game, but it is a beta and the devs are literally asking us for feedback. So for anybody that's saying, quit whining, quit complaining, just trust the developer's vision, the devs are asking us for our feedback. I know my viewers as well. They want to know my honest impressions and opinions on the game. So that's what I'm going to be providing today. Feel free to disagree. I completely respect opposing positions as long as they are presented respectfully. I respect your opinion. All I ask in return is that you respect mine. If there's something you disagree with here, I would love to see why you disagree with my opinion rather than just calling me a baby or whining and complaining about something. I'm allowed to express my opinions and I'm open to hearing your opinions as well. So let's just hop into this. If you guys saw when the first day of the beta came out, I presented my initial impressions based on my very limited experience at the time. And in general, I was not enjoying myself with the game. I wasn't having a very good time. Now since then, the level cap has increased, so we got to see more of the game. We also saw a few adjustments, like we saw the addition of the minimap, even though it doesn't show enemy fire on it. That was a really big change that I really personally enjoyed quite a bit, and that significantly improved my enjoyment of the game. So for anybody asking, has my opinion changed since then? Yes, to an extent at least. I have found a lot more enjoyment with the game towards the end of the beta. And first, let's just go over the things that I'm really liking about the game so far. This is going to be a relatively short section because it's pretty easy to talk about what you like, whereas when I'm sharing my feedback and things I'd like to see improved, I do want to elaborate on those things a bit more. So first off, the game looks and feels great. The way that your character handles and moves, that feels awesome. I feel like this is an improvement for the Call of Duty franchise. The guns also feel really, really good. That's something I've stated from the beginning. I really like that. And this is a good thing because that's really the core of a first-person shooter, and this game has a very solid core to it. Additionally, I'm really liking the gunsmith, especially after doing some testing now and finding out about some of the cons on the attachments. I was initially very skeptical about the gunsmith and the fact that almost all of the attachments have some cons to them. I was definitely a bit worried about this, especially with the reduction to aim down sight time on a wide variety of attachments. But after I was able to do some testing and I found out that for many of these attachments that state that they reduce your aim down sight speed, it turns out they actually have no measurable impact whatsoever. And therefore, I'm now looking at the gunsmith in a completely different way, and I really like the system. So again, that's a really big win. That's something I'm really liking about this game so far, and I think has a lot of potential going forward. Next up, I was very surprised to find that I really enjoy the ground war mode. The 32v32 map, I had so much more fun with that than I thought I would. Going into it, I thought it was going to be one of those modes where I would play it a couple times and just be kind of done with it and not enjoy myself. But honestly, for the second weekend of the beta, it's all I wanted to play. I didn't want to play the standard 6v6 or 10v10. I just wanted to play ground war, and I had so much more fun playing ground war. And I never would have guessed that at the beginning of the beta. Now, does ground war have its issues? Yes, absolutely. There are some clear performance issues, crazy frame drops, the spawns are just ridiculous. Plus, there's a bunch of people that were getting under the map, especially towards the end of the beta. But even with all those issues, I was still finding most of my enjoyment in the ground war modes. Additionally, 2v2, the gunsmith mode, I really enjoy that as well. I'm also enjoying that more than the 6v6 or 10v10 modes, and that impression didn't change with the beta. Another thing I'm really liking about what they did with the beta is crossplay. Holy crap, I'm amazed that it just worked. I expected some big growing pains here. I expected there to be some massive problems, server issues, crashes, people not being able to actually play together across platforms. But with the exception of some bugs and a few little things that they worked out, crossplay launched very surprisingly smoothly. And this is a really big deal. This looks to be the future of gaming, is proper cross-platform play, and it just worked. So I was very pleasantly surprised with just how smooth this actually worked. Now, of course, I am looking forward to the proper input-based matchmaking at launch, because we didn't have that throughout the beta, but the devs did state that they wanted to test that out a little bit, and they weren't going to go too strict on their input-based matchmaking for the beta. So those are the main good things that I really liked about my beta experience. And overall, as a result of those things, I think this game does have a ton of potential. However, This is where we're going to get into the next section of this video. There are a few things that I feel absolutely must change. These are things that will absolutely be a deal breaker for some people. First up, connections. Now, I know not everybody experienced this. For some people, they were saying they actually had a really good connection experience throughout the entire beta. And that's great. I'm really happy for those people. However, for many of us, especially over on the EU servers where I'm playing on because I'm in Norway at the moment, I was seeing a ton of complaints, and I was running into this personally. It was very inconsistent with the connections. That's not to say that it was horrible the entire time. There were moments where I had really good connections or I didn't have any issues whatsoever with connections. But there were other times where I would go for hours of playtime just getting a horrible connection experience. And the best way to describe these connection issues is it felt like I was dying in one bullet, but it would take me 4 to 5 to get a kill. And when the connection was behaving like that, which was quite often for me personally, the game was pretty much unplayable. It was a horrible experience. It just felt like I was at such a massive disadvantage over everybody I was playing against, and nothing was in my control. It's really hard to have a good time when that's the case. Now, one thing I did notice, unfortunately, I don't have my NetDuma router here in Norway. I left it back in Canada, but a lot of people were doing tests with their NetDumas. And first off, the servers were running at 60 Hertz, which is great to see. Hopefully that actually follows through at launch, unlike with Black Ops 4. But something that a bunch of NetDuma users were noticing is they were often being connected to servers that weren't the best based on their location and their ping to those servers. Now, I don't know if this is due to some sort of strict skill-based matchmaking or if it's some sort of other problem, but whatever it is, that should not be happening. And these connection inconsistencies definitely need to get worked out quickly. Now, I know, yes, it's a beta. That's part of what a beta is for, testing these kind of things out, testing server stability, tweaking all the dials, and just trying to get everything just right when it comes to that. But it is something they definitely have to get on top of quickly, because for anybody that's experiencing those connection issues that I experienced really consistently throughout the beta, that is a game-breaking issue. I didn't have any fun whatsoever when I was experiencing those connection issues. On that same topic of connections, console players need to be able to see their ping, or at the very least, a connection bar that gives them a general indication of their connection to the host. PC players had a ping that they could display for themselves so they could see what their ping was to the host. Console players did not in the beta, and that's just unacceptable in really any first-person shooter. Ping is so important, you need to be able to monitor that kind of stuff. Next up in the category of things that I feel must be changed for launch, and thankfully they have stated they will be working on this, this is the lighting on the maps. This needs a pretty big rework, and this is actually one of the biggest complaints throughout the beta. In far too many situations, if you were outside a building looking in, you would basically just be seeing a black doorway or a black window. You couldn't see anything going on inside of that room, which is completely unrealistic as well, because in real life, light will bounce. And in a really sunny day, looking into an open window, it's not going to be completely pitch black inside that room for you. Additionally, the human eye in real life is much better at adapting to those situations, and therefore it's just not realistic at all to have the lighting the way they had it in the beta build of the game. I ran into far too many gunfights throughout this beta where all I could see was a name tag, and I was just shooting the space below a name tag because I know there's an enemy there, but I can't see him. And that does not make for a good gameplay experience. I'm here to play a first-person shooter, not a hide-and-seek game, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what they end up doing with this lighting and the visibility in the full build of the game, because like I said, they have confirmed they will be making adjustments to this. I just hope they end up getting it right. Next up on the same category of things that I feel absolutely must change for launch, this is the spawns. The spawns were in a very rough state in the beta, and I'm not just talking about ground war. Like, ground war is its own thing. Yes, you have squad spawning and the way you spawn on flags and everything. You're going to have issues with that regardless, even though I feel like those need work. When I'm talking about spawns here, I'm more so referring to the spawns in the 6v6 and 10v10 modes. I already did an entire video breaking down the spawns in a lot greater detail and the issues that I have with the spawns, but the overall gist of that is the spawns in this game lack predictability and they ruin the flow of the gameplay. The more randomness to the flow that you introduce, the more you encourage reactionary gameplay, the more you reduce any sort of control over a match, and therefore the more you lower the skill gap in the game. So the spawns in general need to be more predictable. I'm not talking about the point where they're extremely exploitable either, just have some more predictable flow to those spawns. Make it more obvious when a spawn is going to flip. Stop spawning people in the middle of the map. Spawn them on the ends of the maps. I honestly feel like a lot of the complaints about the map design are actually more so related to these spawns and the fact that people were spawning in places that you would never expect them to spawn in because they simply shouldn't be spawning there. So this is why spawns are something that I feel definitely need to be improved for the launch of the game. And this is another thing where the developers have confirmed that, of course, they will be working on this. They have collected a ton of data for spawns throughout the beta, and that's part of what a beta is for. So again, in this area, I am optimistic. Things will change. I just hope they manage to get it right fairly quickly. And honestly, that's it for my list of things that I feel absolutely must change with this game. And as you can see, good news here is they're working on all of those things, and I do expect all of those areas to improve over time. As a result, despite the issues I had with this game during the beta and those times where I was just so frustrated with the beta, I am quite optimistic for the full build of the game, and I feel if they improve in these 3 areas, the entire game will improve significantly. That's not to say that the game would be perfect if these changes were made. I just feel those are the biggest issues with the beta and things that absolutely need to be changed. But we're not going to stop here. Now we're going to move on to the really nitpicky little things about this game that honestly aren't deal breakers for me. I can totally accept it if these things aren't changed at all. These are just little things that I personally feel would improve the game, and if I were in charge, these are the changes I would make. I know a lot of you guys don't like it when I get nitpicky about this stuff, but I'm here to share my honest impressions and opinions. Feel free to disagree. Again, all I ask is that you respect my opinions. First up, I feel like Killstreaks, by default, if you're not using the kill chain perk, they should loot. So you should be able to earn the same kill streak more than once in a single life, as long as you're getting the gun kills required for that. So if I'm running UAV as my highest kill streak, I should be able to get a UAV every 4 kills. I'm putting the same amount of skill and effort in to get each one of those UAVs, so I don't see a problem with that. Now, obviously, this shouldn't apply to the kill chain perk. That would be completely overpowered, but when you're not using kill chain, I do feel like Killstreaks should loop. Next up, I would make a bit of an adjustment to the EOD perk, which is basically the flak jacket of this game. It protects you from explosives. I was noticing that there were several times where I had full health and I died to a single claymore or a single frag grenade, for instance, and I don't feel that should be the case. I feel like if you're using this perk, you should be guaranteed to survive an explosive piece of equipment if you're at full health. I don't care if it takes you down to literally 1 HP, you should be guaranteed to survive that. Next up, I would like to see a slight improvement to the spotter perk. This is the one that allows you to see equipment through walls, like claymores, for instance. And when I was using it, I found that it didn't really show claymores very bright. Like, it was still really hard to see a claymore through a wall, for instance. And I actually had better odds running the EOD perk for seeing claymores through walls, because you get that little hack icon above it. So I do feel spotter could use a buff in this particular area. Next up, on the same topic of claymores, I do feel like they could use some adjustments as well. Claymores in the past in Call of Duty, I feel like were balanced quite well. You would always get a click first, then there'd be a slight delay, then the claymore would explode. In this game, it seems like the moment you trigger a claymore, it explodes and you're dead. As a result, this takes away from the counterplay of a claymore. When you see a claymore around a corner, like you were playing really carefully, you spotted that claymore before triggering it. In the past, you could peek it really quickly to trigger it, then you could get back into cover really quickly, avoid all damage from that claymore, and then push in and kill the person camping behind it. In Modern Warfare, that's not a viable tactic. I've tried that a few times where I just wanted to peek it to activate it and then get back to cover, and it would explode so fast that there was no avoiding it. I would just die. So I do think there needs to be a slight delay between when you trigger a claymore and when it actually explodes. The next little thing that I personally would change, and this one is going to be a little bit controversial, I would make it so the ghost perk doesn't work if you're stationary for a certain period of time. Now, I don't want it to be like it is in Black Ops 4. That's not nearly forgiving enough. I'm thinking more so if you're using the ghost perk and you stay stationary for like 5 to 10 seconds, which is a long time in Call of Duty, then I feel the ghost perk should deactivate and you should show up if the enemy has a UAV up. This would still make it so if you need to pause for a few seconds or get a reload or heal up or something, the ghost perk would still be working for you. It would be very forgiving. But it wouldn't be working for those people that are just sitting on the same head glitch all game or sitting in the same power position all game, and it would help provide a little bit more counterplay to those people. The main reason I want to see this is in the beta, the ghost perk was an absolute crutch. It was on literally every single class setup I had. There was no reason not to run ghost. It was by far the most powerful choice in tier 2. And therefore, I feel like this change would find a nice balance where it's still a very viable perk to the average person that's even moving around just a little bit on the map, without being a crutch for those people that want to sit in the exact same spot the whole time. Next up, I really want to see the nuke be a lot more satisfying, mainly in the audio design for the countdown. I always think back to Modern Warfare 2. That countdown was so intense and so cool, and I really would like to see something like that return, because it is relatively lackluster when you call a nuke in Modern Warfare. I would honestly be totally fine if they literally copied and pasted the audio assets from Modern Warfare 2. That would be a nice little Easter egg as well. Because anytime somebody called a tactical nuke in that game, it was a pretty crazy experience, and I really didn't get that same sort of a feeling with the tactical nuke in Modern Warfare. Next up, Killstreaks. Now personally, I prefer the score streak system, especially in objective game modes, because it actually encourages people to play the objective rather than just camp and try and get their kill streaks up. Now, having said that, I am fine with the fact that Modern Warfare did decide to go with the kill streak system this time around. However, I really would prefer if they went with the point streak system. So if you cap a non-neutral domination flag, for instance, it gives you a point towards your streak. I think that's the very least they could do for objective game modes, because admittedly, throughout the beta, there were several times where I was maybe a few kills off of one of my mid-tier streaks or higher-end streaks, and I could have probably captured the flag, but there was no incentive for me to do that, and there was no reason for me to risk my kill streak in order to try and capture that flag. And I don't think that should be the case. I think there should be some incentive there. And even if it is just one single point, like the equivalent of one single kill for capturing the B flag, that's all it would have taken for me to actually play the objective in that situation. So if it were up to me, I would at the very least turn those kill streaks into point streaks. On the same topic of kill streaks, the white phosphorus streak, I do have a bit of an issue with this, and it's not the political issue that a lot of people have. It's more so just the visibility in the match. When somebody calls a white phosphorus in, whether that be a teammate or an enemy, it just completely destroys visibility on the map, and I find that to be just overkill for a streak. It's kind of annoying that one of your teammates can just change up the visibility so much, and I do feel that it takes away from the gameplay experience. Now, I'm okay with it changing the visibility a little bit, but I just feel like in the state that it was in the beta, it was a little bit too much. Next up with kill streaks, I did find some of the kill streaks, like the VTOL or the support helicopter, for instance, I did feel like they were just way too loud. Now, it might be realistic that those are extremely loud and everything, but for gameplay balance and everything, I feel like they were definitely a little bit too loud. So I would tone those back just a little bit in the audio department. Also, with the VTOL, this thing should not be targeting and killing people through rooftops. While that would be realistic that they could easily punch through those rooftops with the rounds that they're firing on the VTOL, it doesn't make for good gameplay balance. You should feel safe from an aerial streak if you are comfortably inside a building, and I just never felt safe when there was a VTOL in the air. And therefore, I do hope they end up fixing this. They did mention that they will be making some adjustments to that, so hopefully that will never happen again in the full build of the game. Moving on to the next little nitpicky thing that I have here, I wouldn't mind seeing either a slight reduction across the board to the scope glint for sniper rifles, or perhaps an attachment that will reduce the scope glint or maybe even eliminate it completely, while also having some drawbacks in order to keep it balanced. Now finally, on my list of nitpicky changes, I wouldn't mind if they toned down fall damage just a little bit, and this is mainly for the ground war mode. I really noticed there were a lot of situations where I thought I could survive a fall while still taking a decent amount of damage, but I would die from full health, and I just feel like if they made it slightly more forgiving, it would be in a better place. But with that, there's one last thing I want to talk about before wrapping up this video, and I decided to just put it in its own section here, and this is the map design, mainly for the standard modes like 6v6, 10v10. Now, this is largely based on personal preference, but I'm not really a big fan of the maps that we've seen in the beta. Gunrunner, I think, is okay. I actually quite like Gunrunner, but the other maps that we played, I wasn't really a big fan of them. And to be fair, I'm not expecting really strict Treyarch-style 3-lane maps, and I don't even want that for this game. I was, however, expecting more of the COD 4 to Modern Warfare 2 style maps with more openness and less strict lanes, but still more controlled power positions, routes, and sightlines. When I think back to the maps from Modern Warfare 2, for instance, things were far more controlled in general. There weren't as many different windows and areas that you had to worry about at any given time, yet at the same time, they weren't that strict 3-lane design that people tend to want to get away from in this particular game. With Modern Warfare, I just feel like there are too many power positions, too many sight lines, too many windows, too many head glitches, and therefore I don't really like the maps in general in this game based on what we've seen so far. Now, I will say a lot of the reason I didn't like the maps in this game is just due to the spawn issues as well as the lighting issues that I already talked about, and I already expect those will be fixed. So I am really interested to see how these maps play out and how they improve once the spawns and the lighting improve. And when it comes to maps, I'm actually not really going to be requesting any changes here. I just wanted to express the fact that this isn't really my preferred style of map design. I'm not really a huge fan of it, but I can and I will adapt to these maps. And that's pretty much where I wanted to leave today's video. In conclusion, my overall impressions of the beta, I really think this game has a lot of potential, and once we see those major fixes that I mentioned, I think this could be a very solid game. After the beta, I will say that Ground War and Gunfight were definitely the highlights for me. I enjoyed them quite a bit more than I enjoyed the standard Call of Duty modes like 6 vs 6 and 10 vs 10. And this does have me a little bit concerned about the game, but at the same time, like I said, I am optimistic. Of course, I'd like to know in the comment section below, what are you guys thinking about Modern Warfare after playing through the entire beta? What are the things you like about the game? What sort of things do you hope they change with the game? Just let me know all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.
Yeah.